The emergency room at Dallas Presbyterian Hospital buzzed with its usual chaos of Friday night trauma cases. But Detective Maria Santos had seen enough crime scenes to know when something was different. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the pediatric wing as she made her way down the sterile corridor, her footsteps echoing against the polished linoleum floor. It was 2:47 a.m. on October 15th, and she had been pulled from her warm bed by a phone call that would haunt her for months to come. Detective Santos? A young nurse with tired eyes approached her near room 314. "I'm Sarah Michel. I've been with her since the ambulance arrived." The nurse's voice carried the weight of someone who had seen too much suffering in her short career. "Fair warning, what you're about to see will break your heart." Maria had been with the Dallas Police Department's Special Victims Unit for 12 years, specializing in crimes against children. She thought she had built an armor around her emotions, but nothing could have prepared her for the sight that greeted her when she pushed open the heavy hospital room door. There, in the center of a bed that seemed enormous compared to her tiny frame, sat 3-year-old Lily Chun. The toddler was clutching a teddy bear so tightly that her small knuckles had turned white. The bear, once golden brown and fluffy, was now torn and stained with what Maria recognized as dried blood. Lily's dark hair hung in tangled strands around her face, and her pajamas, decorated with smiling cartoon elephants, told a story of innocence interrupted by unthinkable violence. But it was Lily's eyes that struck Maria the hardest. They were completely vacant, staring at nothing and everything at once. The child hadn't blinked since Maria entered the room, hadn't acknowledged her presence, hadn't made a sound. According to the medical reports, Lily hadn't spoken a single word since paramedics found her hiding under the kitchen table of her family's suburban home in Richardson, Texas. "How long has she been like this?" Maria whispered to Dr. Jennifer Park, the attending pediatrician who had joined them in the room. 7 hours and counting, Dr. Park replied, her voice heavy with concern. "No words, no crying, barely any movement except to hold that bear. We've run every test imaginable. Physically, she's unharmed, but psychologically, ... The doctor's voice trailed off as she shook her head. "I've never seen trauma manifest quite like this in someone so young." Maria pulled up a chair beside Lily's bed, moving slowly and deliberately to avoid startling the child. She had learned over the years that rushing traumatized victims, especially children, often pushed them deeper into their protective shells. The detective's training told her to be patient, but her heart ached seeing this beautiful little girl trapped inside her own mind. "Hi, Lily," Maria said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "My name is Maria. I'm here to help you and to find the people who hurt your family." No response. Lily continued staring straight ahead, her small chest rising and falling with mechanical precision. Maria tried again, this time reaching into her pocket for a small photo of her own daughter. "I have a little girl, too. Her name is Isabella, and she's 4 years old, just a little bit older than you. She loves teddy bears just like yours." Maria placed the photo on the bedside table where Lily could see it if she chose to look. "Would you like to tell me about your bear?" Still nothing. The only sounds in the room were the steady beeping of monitoring equipment and the distant hum of hospital activity. Maria glanced at her watch. 3:15 a.m. Time was not on their side. Earlier that evening, at approximately 8:30 p.m., neighbors had called 911 after hearing screams and what sounded like gunshots coming from the Chun family's 2-story colonial home on Maple Street. When police arrived, they found a scene that would be seared into their memories forever. David Chun, a 34-year-old cybersecurity expert, lay dead in the living room from multiple gunshot wounds. His wife, May Chun, a 32-year-old pediatric nurse, was found unconscious at the bottom of the staircase with severe head trauma and was rushed into emergency surgery. The house had been ransacked, with furniture overturned and drawers pulled out, their contents scattered across every room. It appeared the intruders had been searching for something specific, though what remained a mystery. Security cameras from neighboring houses captured footage of 3 masked figures fleeing the scene, but the images were too dark and grainy to provide useful identification. That's when first responders heard a sound that chilled them to the bone, a soft whimpering coming from under the kitchen table. There they found Lily, wedged between the table legs and chairs, covered in her mother's blood, but physically unharmed. She had witnessed everything. The thing is, Officer Brad Williams had explained to Maria over the phone earlier, the little girl saw their faces. The living room lights were on, and from her hiding spot under that table, she had a clear view of everything that happened. She's the only witness we have, Detective. Without her testimony, these monsters might never face justice. Maria understood, the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. 3 dangerous killers were walking free somewhere in Dallas, possibly planning their next attack. Every hour that passed increased the likelihood they would disappear forever or strike again. But looking at this traumatized child, Maria also understood that pushing too hard, too fast, could cause irreparable psychological damage. We need to be very careful here, Dr. Park had warned. Lily is exhibiting signs of selective mutism brought on by extreme trauma. Forcing her to speak before she's ready could push her deeper into this state, potentially causing permanent damage. She needs time, patience, and specialized therapeutic intervention. As Maria sat in that hospital room watching Lily stare into nothingness, she made a silent vow. She would find a way to help this little girl find her voice again, not just for the sake of justice, but because every child deserved to feel safe enough to speak. What Maria didn't know was that help would come in a form she never could have. Imagined 4 legs, golden fur, and a heart big enough to heal even the deepest wounds. The clock on the wall ticked toward 4 a.m. as Maria finally stood to leave, promising Lily she would return the next day. As she reached the door, she thought she heard the softest sound, perhaps a whisper, maybe just the settling of hospital equipment. She turned back hopefully, but Lily remained frozen in place, clutching her blood-stained teddy bear, holding secrets that could change everything. Officer Jake Thompson had always believed that some partnerships were written in the stars, but his bond with Scout went beyond anything he could have imagined when he first entered the Dallas Police Department's K-9 training program 3 years earlier. As he drove through the quiet streets of downtown Dallas at 7 a.m. on Saturday morning, Scout sat perfectly positioned in the passenger seat of their specially equipped patrol vehicle, his intelligent golden eyes scanning the world with the focused attention that had made him legendary among his peers. Scout wasn't your typical police dog. While his German Shepherd and Belgian Malinois colleagues were trained for drug detection, bomb sniffing, and suspect apprehension, Scout had been selected for something far more delicate and infinitely more challenging: healing broken hearts and coaxing voices from the silence of trauma. At 4 years old, the Golden Retriever had already worked with over 60 victims of violent crimes, but most had been adults or teenagers who could at least communicate their basic needs. "This one's different, buddy," Jake said softly, reaching over to scratch behind Scout's ears as they pulled into the hospital parking garage. 3 years old, hasn't spoken since Thursday night. Lost her dad. Mom's fighting for her life in ICU, and she saw the whole thing. Scout's tail gave a gentle thump against the seat, as if he understood the gravity of their mission. In many ways, Jake believed he did. The partnership between Jake and Scout had begun in an unconventional way. Jake, a former Army medic who had served 2 tours in Afghanistan, had struggled with his own PTSD after leaving the military. Traditional therapy had helped, but it was his volunteer work at a local animal shelter that truly began his healing process. When the Dallas Police Department announced they were launching a victim services therapy dog program, Jake knew he had found his calling. Scout had been donated to the program by a local breeder whose daughter had been helped by a therapy dog after a car accident. From the moment Jake met the 8-week-old golden retriever puppy, he knew they were destined to work together. Scout's temperament was extraordinary, patient beyond his years, intuitive about human emotions, and possessed of an almost supernatural ability to sense when someone was in pain. The training process had been intense and comprehensive. While traditional police dogs learned to be aggressive and assertive, Scout was taught the opposite. He learned to approach slowly, to read body language, to provide comfort without being overwhelming. He was trained to remain calm in courtrooms, hospitals, and crisis situations. Most importantly, he learned to be a bridge between traumatized victims and the world they were afraid to rejoin. "Officer Thompson?" A familiar voice called out as Jake and Scout entered the hospital lobby. Detective Maria Santos approached them, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her usually pristine appearance showed signs of the stress she was carrying. Wrinkled clothes, dark circles under her eyes, and the haggard expression of someone fighting against time. "Detective Santos," Jake replied, extending his hand. "I got your message about the little girl. Scout and I are ready to help however we can." Scout moved closer to Maria, sensing her emotional state, and gently pressed against her leg in a gesture of support. "God, I hope so," Maria said, unconsciously reaching down to pet Scout's head. "I've been with her for most of the night. She won't respond to anyone. Doctors, nurses, social workers. We're running out of options, and every hour that passes gives those killers more time to disappear." As they rode the elevator to the pediatric floor, Jake studied the case file Maria had prepared. Lily Chun's story was heartbreaking, even by the standards he had become accustomed to in his work. The crime scene photos showed a level of violence that seemed impossible to reconcile with the suburban neighborhood where it occurred. The family appeared to have been targeted specifically, though the motive remained unclear. "Has she shown any response to anything at all?" Jake asked as they walked down the corridor toward Lily's room. "The nurses say she holds that teddy bear like her life depends on it," Maria replied. "And yesterday evening, one of the pediatric residents thought she saw Lily mouth the word mommy when they mentioned her mother's surgery, but she can't be sure. Other than that, nothing." Scout's behavior began to change as they approached. Room 314. His ears perked up, his pace slowed, and his entire demeanor shifted into what Jake recognized as his working mode. The dog somehow sensed that behind that door was someone who desperately needed his help. "Let me go in first with Scout," Jake suggested. Sometimes a child can feel overwhelmed if too many people enter their space at once. Maria nodded, understanding the wisdom in this approach. Jake pushed open the door slowly, allowing Scout to precede him into the room. What he saw took his breath away. Lily Chun was even smaller than he had imagined, dwarfed by the hospital bed and connected to monitoring equipment that seemed enormous compared to her tiny frame. Her dark hair fell across her face like a curtain, and she clutched the torn teddy bear with an intensity that spoke of desperate need for security. But it was Scout's reaction that truly amazed Jake. The golden retriever approached Lily's bed with a gentleness that seemed almost reverent. He didn't rush forward or try to get her attention. Instead, he simply positioned himself beside the bed and lay down, placing his head on his paws and waiting. It was as if he understood that this little girl needed to make the first move, that any pressure or expectation might send her deeper into her protective shell. For several minutes, nothing happened. Jake stood near the door, barely breathing, watching this silent interaction between dog and child. Scout remained perfectly still, his presence offering comfort without demanding anything in return. Lily continued staring at nothing, but Jake noticed something that filled him with hope. Her grip on the teddy bear had relaxed slightly, and her breathing seemed less labored. Then it happened, so slowly that Jake almost missed it. Lily's eyes began to move. Her gaze shifted from the empty space she had been staring at to the beautiful golden dog lying patiently beside her bed. For the first time since the trauma, Lily Chun was looking at something with focused attention. Scout sensed the change immediately. His tail gave the softest wag, barely perceptible, but filled with encouragement. He didn't move from his position, didn't try to get closer, but his brown eyes met Lily's dark ones in a moment of connection that seemed to bridge the chasm of her silence. Jake watched in amazement as Lily slowly, carefully, extended one tiny hand toward Scout. The movement was tentative, fearful, but it was movement nonetheless. When her small fingers made contact with Scout's soft fur, something magical happened in that hospital room. For just a moment, Lily's rigid posture relaxed, and the hint of a breath that might have been a sigh escaped her lips. "Hello there, sweetheart," Jake whispered gently. "This is Scout. He's here because he cares about you, and he wants to help you feel safe again." Lily didn't respond with words, but she didn't pull her hand away either. She began to stroke Scout's fur with careful, deliberate movements, as if testing whether this moment of comfort was real or just another dream that might vanish if she trusted it too completely. Outside in the hallway, Detective Maria Santos watched through the door's window with tears streaming down her face. After hours of silence and despair, she was witnessing the first sign that Lily Chun might eventually find her way back to the world of the living. And it was all because of a golden-hearted dog who understood that sometimes healing begins with a single gentle touch. 2 weeks had passed since Scout first entered Lily Chun's world, and the transformation was nothing short of miraculous. What began as the faintest touch of a small hand on golden fur had blossomed into something that defied every textbook on childhood trauma that Dr. Rebecca Williams had ever studied. The renowned child psychologist stood in the observation room of the Dallas Children's Advocacy Center, watching through one-way glass as the most extraordinary therapy session of her 20-year career unfolded before her eyes. Inside the specially designed playroom, Lily Chun sat cross-legged on a soft blue carpet, surrounded by toys she had ignored for weeks, but was now carefully arranging in a circle around Scout. The golden retriever lay perfectly still in the center of her creation, his patient brown eyes following her every movement, as she worked with the focused concentration of an artist creating a masterpiece. For the first time since the night that shattered her world, Lily was engaged in purposeful play. "Tell me about the castle, Lily," Dr. Williams said softly through the intercom system, her voice gentle and non-threatening as it filled the playroom. Lily looked up briefly, then turned her attention to Scout instead of the psychologist. "Scout," she whispered, her voice so quiet that Dr. Williams had to lean forward to catch the words through the audio system. "This is where the princess lives. She has a big dog who protects her from the scary monsters." Dr. Williams felt her heart skip a beat. These were the longest sentences Lily had spoken since the trauma, and she was using Scout as her intermediary to communicate with the outside world. The child wasn't ready to speak directly to adults yet, but she was beginning to process her experience through the safety of her relationship with the therapy dog. The breakthrough had come gradually, built day by day through a carefully orchestrated routine that honored Lily's need for control and predictability. Every morning at precisely 9 a.m., Officer Jake Thompson would arrive at the temporary foster home where Lily was staying with Janet Rodriguez, a veteran foster mother who specialized in caring for traumatized children. Janet, a former elementary school teacher with silver hair and endless patience, had opened her heart and home to over 40 children during her 15 years as a foster parent. But even she admitted that Lily's case was unlike anything she had encountered before. "Scout's here, sweetheart," Janet would announce gently each morning. And without fail, Lily would appear at the top of the stairs, still clutching her blood-stained teddy bear, but with eyes that now held anticipation instead of vacant terror. The routine was always the same. Scout would wait patiently in the living room while Lily slowly descended the stairs, approached him carefully, and began their day together with a gentle head pat that had become their private greeting ritual. The first week had been about building trust through simple presence. Scout would lie beside Lily as she ate breakfast, never begging for food, but simply being there as a constant, reassuring companion. When Lily retreated to her favorite hiding spot under the dining room table during moments of overwhelming fear, Scout would position himself nearby, creating a protective barrier between her and the world that had hurt her so badly. Jake marveled at Scout's intuitive understanding of what Lily needed. The dog seemed to know exactly when to approach and when to give her space, when to engage in gentle play, and when to simply exist as a calming presence. During Lily's frequent nightmares, Scout would somehow sense her distress even from downstairs, and would position himself outside her bedroom door, his presence providing comfort without being intrusive. The second week brought remarkable progress. Lily began speaking to Scout in whispers, sharing fragments of memories and feelings she couldn't yet express to any human being. Dr. Williams, who had been documenting every interaction through carefully planned observation sessions, was astounded by the therapeutic breakthrough this represented. "Scout, I'm scared the bad men will come back," Lily had confided during one particularly emotional moment, wrapping her arms around the patient dogs. "Nick, will you bite them if they try to hurt me again?" Scout's response was perfect, a gentle nuzzle against her cheek that seemed to say, "I'll always keep you safe," without the aggressive posturing that might have frightened her further. Jake had trained Scout to provide comfort and security, without exhibiting any of the protective behaviors that might trigger additional trauma in someone who had witnessed violence. The playroom sessions with Dr. Williams had become the cornerstone of Lily's healing process. 3 times a week, they would gather in the child-friendly space filled with art supplies, dolls, building blocks, and other therapeutic tools. But it was Scout who served as Lily's translator, the bridge between her internal world and the external support system working so hard to help her heal. "The princess in the castle has nightmares," Lily told Scout during one session, manipulating a small doll that bore a striking resemblance to herself. "She dreams about loud noises and scary faces, but her dog friend stays with her and makes the dreams go away." Dr. Williams took careful notes, recognizing that Lily was using metaphorical play to process her trauma. The princess was clearly Lily herself. The scary faces were the masked intruders who had destroyed her family, and the dog friend was Scout serving as her protector and source of comfort. Detective Maria Santos had become a regular visitor to these sessions, not in her official capacity as an investigator, but as someone who had developed a deep personal investment in Lily's recovery. She watched from the observation room as Lily slowly began to trust again, knowing that each small breakthrough brought them closer to the moment when the child might be able to help bring her parents' killers to justice. "She's remarkable," Maria whispered to Jake during one observation session. "I've never seen anything like the way she connects with Scout. It's almost like he understands exactly what she's been through." Jake nodded, his own eyes moist as he watched his 4-legged partner work his magic. "Scout has this gift," he replied quietly. "He doesn't just provide comfort, he somehow gives people permission to feel safe enough to begin healing. With Lily, it's like he's showing her that not all encounters with others have to end in pain." The most significant breakthrough came on a Thursday afternoon during the 3rd week. Lily was arranging toy animals and families when she suddenly looked up at Dr. Williams, through the observation window and spoke directly to her for the first time. "Dr. Rebecca," Lily said, her voice clear and strong, "Scout wants to know if my mommy is getting better in the hospital." Dr. Williams felt tears streaming down her face as she realized what had just happened. Lily was still using Scout as her intermediary, but she had made direct eye contact and spoken to another human being. It was a monumental step forward, a sign that the walls of trauma were finally beginning to crumble under the patient, loving assault of one extraordinary therapy dog. "Tell Scout that your mommy is getting stronger every day," Dr. Williams replied through the intercom, "and that she can't wait to see you both soon." Lily smiled, then the first genuine smile anyone had seen from her since the night her world fell apart. As she hugged Scout tightly, Detective Santos made a silent vow in the observation room. Soon, very soon, they would need to ask this brave little girl to be even braver and help them ensure that the monsters who had hurt family would never hurt anyone else again. The conference room on the 14th floor of the Dallas County District Attorney's office had never hosted a meeting quite like this one. District Attorney Michael Chun, no relation to the victim's family, despite sharing the same surname, sat at the head of the polished mahogany table, surrounded by legal minds grappling with an unprecedented challenge that would either make legal history or destroy the case against three brutal killers. "Ladies and gentlemen," Chun began, his voice heavy with the weight of impossible decisions, "we have 48 hours before jury selection begins, and we're facing the most complex witness situation of my career." He gestured toward the case files spread across the table like a paper battlefield. 3 suspects in custody, overwhelming physical evidence, but it all hinges on the testimony of a 3-year-old girl who will only speak through a therapy dog. Lead prosecutor Jennifer Adams, a brilliant attorney with 15 years of experience in violent crimes, leaned forward with intensity, burning in her dark eyes. "Michael, we all know that without Lily's testimony, we're looking at circumstantial evidence at best. Marcus Williams, Tony Rodriguez, and Samuel Blake will walk free, and we'll have 3 cold-blooded killers back on the streets within months." The evidence against the 3 suspects was substantial but incomplete. Marcus Williams' distinctive dragon tattoo, described perfectly by Lily during her sessions with Scout, had led police to his doorstep. Security footage from a convenience store showed all 3 men together, just hours before the Chun family murders. Tony Rodriguez's limp, also identified by Lily, was confirmed by medical records from a recent car accident. But defense attorney Sarah Matthews, representing Williams, was one of the best criminal lawyers in Texas, and she was already mounting a formidable challenge to the prosecution's case. The defense is arguing that a 3-year-old's testimony is inherently unreliable, explained Assistant DA David Park, flipping through legal precedents on his tablet. Matthews is claiming that Lily's trauma has compromised her memory, and that her descriptions could be based on nightmares, television shows, or suggestions from adults rather than actual observations. Judge Patricia Harrison, presiding over the case, had requested this meeting after reviewing Dr. Williams' extensive documentation of Lily's progress. At 62, Judge Harrison had seen thousands of cases cross her bench, but never anything involving such a young witness with such unique communication requirements. "Dr. Williams," Judge Harrison addressed the child psychologist, "I need you to explain to me, in terms a jury can understand, why Lily's method of communication through this therapy dog should be considered reliable testimony." Dr. Rebecca Williams had spent sleepless nights preparing for this moment, knowing that her professional assessment could determine whether justice would be served. "Your Honor, what we're witnessing with Lily is not unusual for severely traumatized children. She has developed what we call selective communication. She's psychologically capable of speaking and remembering, but she can only access those abilities through her bond with Scout. The dog represents safety and trust, in a world that has become terrifyingly unpredictable. Officer Jake Thompson, who had never expected to find himself in a legal strategy meeting, spoke up from his position near the window. Scout and I have worked with dozens of trauma victims, but never in a courtroom setting. The question isn't whether Lily can remember what happened. She's demonstrated remarkable accuracy in describing details that only an eyewitness could know. The question is whether she can maintain that connection with Scout in a high-stress environment like a trial. The legal challenges were staggering. Defense attorney Matthews had filed motion after motion challenging every aspect of Lily's potential testimony. She argued that bringing a police dog into the courtroom would prejudice the jury, that a 3-year-old lacked the cognitive development necessary for reliable testimony, and that the prosecution was engaging in emotional manipulation by using a traumatized child and a cute dog to sway the jury's sympathies. She's not wrong about the prejudicial impact, admitted veteran defense attorney Robert Hayes, who was serving as a consultant to the prosecution team. A golden retriever therapy dog is going to generate enormous sympathy from any jury. The defense will argue that the emotional manipulation overrides the search for truth. But it was Detective Maria Santos who cut through the legal complexities with the stark reality of their situation. We have 3 killers who executed a targeted hit on David Chun, nearly murdered his wife, and traumatized their daughter for life. They ransacked that house looking for something specific. David's work files suggest he may have discovered something about his company's cybersecurity contracts that someone was willing to kill for. Without Lily's testimony identifying these men, they walk free and likely disappear forever. The breakthrough in understanding the case had come when investigators finally gained access to David Chun's encrypted work files. The cybersecurity expert had been investigating suspicious patterns in government contract bids, potentially worth millions of dollars. His files contained evidence of a sophisticated hacking operation that could have exposed high-level corruption. The 3 suspects weren't random home invaders. They were hired professionals sent to retrieve and destroy David's evidence. Dr. Williams presented her detailed psychological assessment to the legal team. Lily has made extraordinary progress. In 3 weeks, she's now communicating complex thoughts and memories through Scout, demonstrating consistent recall of specific details, and showing no signs of false memory syndrome or external suggestion. Her descriptions of the suspects have remained unchanged across multiple sessions, and she's provided details about their conversation and actions that weren't reported in any media coverage. The courtroom accommodations required for Lily's testimony were unprecedented. Special lighting would be installed to reduce harsh shadows that might frighten her. A child-sized witness chair would replace the standard adult version. Most importantly, Judge Harrison was considering allowing Scout to remain physically with Lily during her testimony, a decision that would set legal precedent across the United States. The precedent we set here will affect how courts handle child witnesses nationwide, Judge Harrison acknowledged. We're essentially asking, can the justice system adapt to meet the needs of traumatized children, or do we sacrifice potential testimony because it doesn't fit traditional courtroom procedures? Defense attorney Sarah Matthews wasn't backing down without a fight. Her pre-trial motions included demands for independent psychological evaluation of Lily, challenges to Scout's training credentials, and arguments that the prosecution was exploiting a child's trauma for legal advantage. She had even requested that Scout be banned from the courthouse entirely, claiming his presence would create an unfair emotional atmosphere. Your Honor, Matthews argued in her written briefs, we sympathize with this child's tragedy, but we cannot allow emotion to override due process. My clients deserve a fair trial based on reliable evidence, not the potentially confused recollections of a traumatized toddler filtered through her attachment to an animal. As the meeting stretched into its 3rd hour, the weight of the decision pressed down on everyone present. Prosecutor Adams summarized the impossible choice they faced. We can proceed with circumstantial evidence and hope for convictions on lesser charges, or we can trust in the bond between a traumatized little girl and a therapy dog to deliver justice for one of the most brutal crimes this city has ever seen. Judge Harrison stood slowly, her decision evident in the determined set of her shoulders. I've spent 30 years on the bench believing that our justice system must evolve to serve all victims, regardless of age or circumstance. I'm going to allow Scout in my courtroom during Lily's testimony, but I'm also going to require extensive preparation to ensure the child's safety and well-being remain our primary concern. As the meeting adjourned, Jake knelt down to scratch Scout behind the ears. Ready for the biggest case of our career, partner? He whispered. Scout's tail wagged once, a gentle, confident gesture that seemed to say he was ready for whatever challenge awaited them in Judge Harrison's courtroom. In 2 days, the fate of 3 killers would rest in the hands of a 3-year-old girl and her extraordinary canine companion. November 3rd dawned gray and cold in Dallas, with storm clouds gathering over the city as if nature itself understood the gravity of what was about to unfold in courtroom 302 of the Frank Crowley Courts building. By 7 a.m., news vans from every major network lined Commerce Street, their satellite dishes reaching toward the overcast sky like technological prayers for the historic day ahead. The case that legal scholars were already calling the Scout precedent had captured national attention, transforming a local murder trial into a referendum on children's rights, animal-assisted therapy, and the evolving nature of American jurisprudence. Inside the courthouse, security was unprecedented. Detective Maria Santos watched from the prosecutor's table as bailiffs conducted additional screenings, knowing that the 3 defendants, Marcus Williams, Tony Rodriguez, and Samuel Blake, had connections to organized crime that extended far beyond Dallas. The men sat at the defense table in pressed suits that couldn't hide their cold, calculating eyes. Williams, with his distinctive dragon tattoo barely concealed beneath his shirt collar, occasionally glanced toward the courtroom entrance as if expecting someone who would never come. Foster mother Janet Rodriguez sat in the gallery's front row, clutching a tissue box and wearing the navy blue dress she reserved for the most solemn occasions. Beside her sat Dr. Rebecca Williams, whose professional composure masked the anxiety she felt about her young patient's upcoming testimony. After 4 weeks of careful preparation, Lily had made remarkable progress, but no amount of training could fully prepare a 3-year-old for the intimidating atmosphere of a criminal courtroom filled with strangers, media, and the men who had destroyed her family. Judge Patricia Harrison entered at precisely 9 a.m., her black robes billowing as she took her seat at the bench. At 62, she had presided over thousands of cases, but the weight of this moment pressed heavily on her shoulders. Her decision to allow Scout in the courtroom had already prompted 3 appeals to higher courts, all of which had been expeditiously denied. But she knew that every moment of the proceeding would be scrutinized by legal experts nationwide. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Judge Harrison began, her voice carrying the authority of 3 decades on the bench. Today you will witness something unprecedented in American jurisprudence. You are about to hear testimony from a 3-year-old witness who communicates through her bond with a trained therapy dog. I want you to listen not just with your minds, but with your hearts, as we seek truth and justice in this case. The jury, 7 women and 5 men, carefully selected over 2 grueling days of voir dire sat in rapt attention. They had been extensively questioned about their feelings toward children, animals, and trauma, with both sides using precious peremptory challenges to shape a panel they hoped would be sympathetic to their case. Juror number 3, a grandmother of 4, dabbed her eyes preemptively. Juror number 7, a former military police officer, sat ramrod straight, his expression betraying nothing. Lead prosecutor Jennifer Adams rose from her table, her red suit chosen deliberately to project confidence and authority. Your Honor, the state calls Lily Chun to the witness stand. A collective intake of breath swept through the packed courtroom as the doors opened and Officer Jake Thompson entered, leading Scout on a specially designed leash that bore the official seal of the Dallas Police Department. The golden retriever moved with practiced dignity, his service dog vest gleaming under the courtroom's fluorescent lights. But it was the tiny figure walking beside them that caused seasoned reporters to reach for their tissues. Lily Chun, dressed in a simple pink dress with white Mary Jane shoes, looked impossibly small as she walked down the courtroom aisle. Her dark hair had been carefully braided by Janet that morning, and she carried the same teddy bear that had been her constant companion since the night of the murders. But most remarkably, she walked with purpose, her small hand resting confidently on Scout's back as if drawing strength from their connection. Defense attorney Sarah Matthews watched this entrance with barely concealed frustration. Despite her legal challenges, she had to admit that the sight of the child and dog together was profoundly moving. Her clients had insisted on their innocence, but the evidence against them was overwhelming, and now they faced the most sympathetic witness imaginable. The specially constructed witness area had been designed with Lily's needs in mind. A small chair, upholstered in soft blue fabric, sat at the perfect height for a 3-year-old. Beside it, a larger cushion had been placed for Scout, positioned so that Lily could maintain physical contact with him throughout her testimony. Court staff had spent hours adjusting the lighting to eliminate harsh shadows and had even installed a small sound system to amplify Lily's quiet voice. "Good morning, Lily," Judge Harrison said gently as the child approached the witness stand. "Do you remember meeting me in my office last week?" Lily nodded solemnly, then looked down at Scout. "She's the nice judge lady," she told the dog in a whisper that the courtroom microphones picked up clearly. "The one who said you could stay with me?" Scout's tail wagged once, a gentle encouragement that seemed to fortify Lily's resolve. As she settled into the witness chair with Scout positioned beside her, the courtroom fell into absolute silence. Even the court reporter seemed to type more quietly, understanding the delicate nature of this moment. Prosecutor Adams approached the witness stand with the careful movements of someone approaching a wild bird that might fly away at any sudden gesture. She had spent days preparing for this moment, crafting questions that a 3-year-old could understand while still eliciting the testimony needed to convict 3 killers. "Lily, can you tell us your name?" Adams asked softly. The little girl looked at Scout, then back at the prosecutor. "My name is Lily Chun, and this is my best friend Scout. He helps me when I'm scared. And how old are you, Lily?" "I'm 3 years old," Lily replied, holding up 3 tiny fingers. "But Mommy says I'm very smart for my age." Her mention of her mother, still recovering from her injuries, caused several jury members to shift uncomfortably in their seats. Adams continued with basic questions designed to establish Lily's competency as a witness. What was her favorite color? Pink. What did she like to eat for breakfast? Pancakes. Did she know the difference between telling the truth and telling a lie? "Truth is real, and lies make people sad," Lily answered with the clarity of a child who had learned this distinction through painful experience. But it was when Adams asked about her family that Lily's demeanor began to change. Her small hand tightened on Scout's fur, and her voice became quieter, more hesitant. "Lily, can you tell us about your mommy and daddy?" Adams asked gently. "Daddy went to heaven," Lily said simply, her words hitting the courtroom like physical blows. "Bad men hurt him and made him go away. Mommy is in the hospital getting better, but she has always on her head." Defense attorney Matthews had prepared extensively to cross-examine this witness, but sitting in her chair, Watching this tiny child describe the brutal murder of her father, she found herself questioning whether she could bring herself to challenge anything Lily might say. Her client's futures depended on discrediting this testimony, but Matthews was discovering that there were limits to what even the most aggressive defense attorney could stomach. As Prosecutor Adams prepared to delve into the events of that terrible October night, Scout seemed to sense the approaching difficulty. The therapy dog shifted slightly, positioning himself so that his head rested against Lily's leg, providing maximum comfort for what everyone in the courtroom knew would be the most challenging testimony of this remarkable little girl's young life. In the gallery, Detective Santos held her breath, knowing that the next few minutes would determine whether 3 killers would face justice or walk free to potentially kill again. The weight of everything Lily's healing journey, Scout's patient dedication, the legal precedent being set, and the memory of David Chun's murder converged in this moment of unprecedented courtroom drama. The courtroom's atmosphere grew thick with anticipation as Prosecutor Jennifer Adams approached the most crucial moment in her legal career. She could feel the weight of every eye in the packed gallery, the silent prayers of David Chun's colleagues, who had traveled from across the country to witness justice for their murdered friend, and the barely controlled rage radiating from May Chun's hospital bed, where she watched via closed-circuit television, still recovering from her own near-fatal injuries. "Lily," Adams said softly, kneeling to bring herself to the child's eye level, "I need to ask you about the night when you were hiding under the kitchen table. Do you remember that night?" Lily's entire body tensed, and her grip on Scout's golden fur became so tight that her knuckles turned white. The therapy dog immediately sensed her distress and adjusted his position, pressing closer to her side while maintaining the calm demeanor that had taken years of specialized training to perfect. In the gallery, foster mother Janet Rodriguez leaned forward, ready to intervene if her daughter became too overwhelmed to continue. For a long moment, Lily said nothing. The courtroom held its collective breath as the 3-year-old stared down at Scout, her dark eyes reflecting the internal struggle between the safety of silence and the need to speak truth. Defense attorney Sarah Matthews sat frozen at her table, knowing that whatever came next would either vindicate her clients or seal their fate for life. "Scout," Lily finally whispered, her voice so quiet that the court reporter had to lean forward to catch every word. "Do you remember the scary night when the loud men came to our house?" Scout's response was immediate and profound, a gentle whine that seemed to acknowledge not just Lily's question, but the pain behind it. His brown eyes never left her face as she continued, speaking to him, as if they were alone in the world instead of surrounded by lawyers, reporters, and the 3 men who had destroyed her family. There were 3 bad men, Scout. They had black things on their faces, but I could see their eyes. Lily's voice grew slightly stronger as she found her rhythm, using Scout as her conduit to share the terrible truth she had carried for weeks. The tallest one had a dragon on his arm, just like in my scary dreams. But it wasn't a dream, was it, Scout? Marcus Williams shifted uncomfortably at the defense table, his lawyer placing a warning hand on his arm to prevent any reaction. The dragon tattoo Lily described was visible even beneath his dress shirt, its tail curling around his wrist in intricate detail that no 3-year-old could have imagined. The middle man walked funny, Scout. He went like this, Lily demonstrated. A pronounced limp that matched exactly the gait pattern Tony Rodriguez had developed after his car accident 3 months earlier. Several jury members exchanged meaningful glances, recognizing that this level of detail couldn't have been fabricated by a traumatized child. Prosecutor Adams felt her heart racing as Lily continued her testimony through Scout, but she forced herself to remain calm and supportive. "What did you see from under the table, Lily?" "I saw Daddy trying to protect Mommy," Lily told Scout, her voice becoming steadier with each revelation. "The dragon man grabbed Daddy and said bad words. The limping man went upstairs and made loud noises, breaking things. The third man. He was the scariest one, Scout. He had mean eyes and kept asking Daddy about his computer passwords. The courtroom erupted in surprised murmurs at this crucial detail. The prosecution had theorized that David Chun's murder was connected to his cybersecurity work, but they had lacked concrete evidence of the killer's specific intent. Lily's testimony was providing that missing link in real time. Judge Harrison quickly restored order with her gavel. The court will maintain absolute silence during this testimony, she commanded with quiet authority, knowing that any disruption could traumatize Lily and potentially end this historic moment. What happened next, sweetheart? Adams asked gently, though her prosecutorial instincts screamed for more aggressive questioning. This was the moment that would make or break their case. Lily looked directly at Scout and began speaking in the clearest voice anyone had heard from her since the night of the murders. What came next would be replayed on news channels across America for years to come. Scout, the Dragon Man, pushed Daddy really hard, and Daddy fell down and didn't get up. Mommy screamed and tried to run to Daddy, but the mean eyes man pushed her down the big stairs. I heard her crying and saying, "Please don't hurt my baby. Please don't hurt Lily." Tears began streaming down the little girl's face, but her voice remained strong. I wanted to help them, Scout, but I was too little and too scared. The emotional impact of these words hit the courtroom like a physical wave. Juror number 3, the grandmother, was openly weeping. Even Bailiff Martinez, a 20-year veteran of courthouse security, had to look away to maintain his professional composure. But Lily wasn't finished. In a moment that would define her courage for the rest of her life, she turned slightly toward the defense table with the 3 defendants. Sut, though she continued speaking to Scout rather than looking directly at the men who had haunted her nightmares. Scout, those are the same men sitting over there. The Dragon Man, the Limping Man, and the one with mean eyes. They hurt my family and made Daddy go to heaven. But you're here with me now, so I'm not scared to tell everyone what they did. The silence that followed was deafening. Defense Attorney Matthews felt her carefully constructed case crumbling around her as she watched her clients' faces. Williams had gone pale, Rodriguez was staring at the table, and Blake, the man Lily had identified as having mean eyes, looked like he wanted to disappear entirely. Samuel Blake suddenly stood up at the defense table, his composure finally cracking under the weight of being identified by this brave little girl. "She's lying," he shouted, his voice echoing through the stunned courtroom. "A 3-year-old can't remember all that. Someone coached her. Mr. Blake, sit down immediately," Judge Harrison commanded, but the damage was done. Blake's outburst had confirmed his guilt more effectively than any evidence could have, and every person in the courtroom, including his own defense team, knew it. "I remember everything," Lily said firmly, speaking directly to Blake for the first time instead of through Scout. Her small voice carried across the silent courtroom with surprising strength. "I remember because you scared me so much that I can't forget. Scout helps me be brave enough to tell the truth about what you did to my mommy and daddy." The courtroom exploded into chaos as Blake's co-defendants tried to distance themselves from his outburst, while Matthews frantically attempted damage control. But Prosecutor Adams knew that the case was won. Lily Chun, speaking through her bond with Scout, had delivered testimony that was not only compelling and detailed, but had prompted a confession of sorts from one of the defendants himself. As court officers restored order and Judge Harrison called for a recess, Lily remained calm in her witness chair, one small hand resting on Scout's head. She had done what many adults could not. She had faced her worst fears and spoken truth to power, ensuring that the men who destroyed her family would face justice. Detective Santos watched from the gallery with tears of pride and relief streaming down her face. This remarkable little girl and her extraordinary therapy dog had just delivered one of the most powerful testimonies in American legal history. The jury deliberation room on the 15th floor of the Frank Crowley Courts building had never witnessed discussions quite like those that unfolded over the next 18 hours. 12 citizens from vastly different backgrounds found themselves united by one extraordinary testimony that had shaken them to their core. Foreman Robert Martinez, a retired high school principal, looked around the table at faces still processing what they had witnessed in Judge Harrison's courtroom. "I've seen a lot of children in my 30 years in education," Martinez said quietly, "but I've never seen a 3-year-old display that kind of clarity and courage under pressure. That little girl didn't just remember what happened, she relived it to make sure those monsters couldn't hurt anyone else." Juror number 7, former military police officer Janet Thompson, nodded grimly. Blake's outburst confirmed everything. You don't react that violently to a child's testimony unless you're guilty as hell. The way he jumped up screaming about lies, that wasn't the response of an innocent man. The evidence presented during the remainder of the trial had been overwhelming once Lily broke the case open. The computer passwords, she mentioned, led investigators to discover that David Chun had uncovered a massive cybersecurity fraud scheme involving government defense contracts worth over $50 million. The 3 defendants weren't random killers. They were hired assassins sent to retrieve David's evidence and eliminate the whistleblower who threatened to expose high-level corruption reaching into the Pentagon itself. FBI cybercrime specialist agent Patricia Wong had testified that David Chun's encrypted files contained irrefutable proof of the conspiracy. The files showed forged security certifications, backdoor access codes sold to foreign agents, and a network of corrupted officials spanning 3 states. David's murder wasn't just a family tragedy. It was an assassination designed to protect a criminal enterprise that threatened national security. "The dragon tattoo sealed it for me," said juror number 3, grandmother Helen Rodriguez. That baby described something she couldn't have imagined, something she could only have seen if she was really there, really witnessing her father's murder. Her voice trembled with barely controlled anger. They killed that man in front of his child. They destroyed a family to protect their dirty money. The defense team's attempts to discredit Lily's testimony had backfired spectacularly. Defense attorney Sarah Matthews had chosen not to cross-examine Lily directly, recognizing that challenging a traumatized 3-year-old would only generate sympathy for the prosecution. Instead, she had called expert witnesses to testify about the unreliability of children's memories and the potential for suggestion in therapy sessions. Dr. Richard Hawkins, a defense expert in childhood psychology, had testified that 3-year-olds were highly susceptible to false memories created by leading questions from therapists or investigators. But his testimony crumbled under cross-examination when Prosecutor Adams introduced video recordings of Lily's therapy sessions showing that she had provided consistent details about the murders without any prompting from Dr. Williams or other adults. The child's description of events remained identical across 14 separate therapy sessions. Adams had argued during closing arguments. She described the dragon tattoo before police had any suspects. She mentioned the limp before investigators knew about Tony Rodriguez's car accident. She talked about computer passwords before the FBI discovered the cybersecurity conspiracy. This isn't false memory. This is a brave little girl helping us solve one of the most complex criminal cases in Dallas history. The physical evidence had corroborated every detail of Lily's testimony. Marcus Williams' dragon tattoo was photographed and matched exactly to Lily's descriptions. Tony Rodriguez's medical records confirmed his injury and distinctive gait. Samuel Blake's criminal history revealed prior arrests for corporate espionage and intimidation. Most damning of all, Forensic analysis of David Chun's computers showed that someone had attempted to access his encrypted files using brute force hacking techniques on the night of the murder. During deliberations, the jury had requested to review Lily's testimony 3 times, not because they doubted her credibility, but because they wanted to ensure they understood every crucial detail. The impact of watching a 3-year-old find her voice through her bond with Scout had transcended legal proceedings. It had become a moment of human connection that reminded them why the justice system existed in the first place. I keep thinking about her mother watching from that hospital bed, said juror number 9, social worker Maria Santos. Mei Chun fought for her life while these animals tried to destroy her family. Now her daughter, her brave little daughter, has given us everything we need to make sure they never hurt anyone again. The deliberation's most emotional moment came when the jury reviewed Scout's role in enabling Lily's testimony. Several members had worried initially that the therapy dog's presence might be more spectacle than substance, but the evidence was undeniable. Without Scout, Lily couldn't have testified at all. That dog didn't just provide comfort, observed juror number 12, veterinarian Dr. Michael Park. He gave that child the strength to face her worst fears and speak truth to power. What we witnessed wasn't a legal gimmick. It was healing in action, courage in its purest form. When the jury finally returned to the courtroom, after 18 hours of deliberation, the packed gallery fell silent. News crews that had maintained vigil throughout the night focused their cameras on the jury box, knowing that this verdict would reverberate far beyond Dallas. Has the jury reached a verdict? Judge Harrison asked with a solemnity befitting this historic moment. We have, Your Honor, Foreman Martinez replied, his voice steady despite the weight of what he was about to announce. On the charge of capital murder in the first degree against Marcus Williams, how do you find? Guilty, Your Honor. The word echoed through the courtroom like thunder. In the gallery, David Chun's colleagues from the cybersecurity firm embraced each other with tears of relief. Detective Santos felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she had carried for weeks. On the charge of capital murder in the first degree against Tony Rodriguez, how do you find? Guilty, Your Honor. On the charge of capital murder in the first degree against Samuel Blake, how do you find? Guilty, Your Honor. The courtroom erupted in applause that Judge Harrison allowed to continue for several moments before restoring order. All 3 defendants had been convicted on all counts: capital murder, conspiracy, attempted murder of Mei Chun, and child endangerment. They faced sentences of life without parole or potentially the death penalty. But the most powerful moment came when the verdict was read to Mei Chun via video link at her hospital bed. The woman who had fought for her life while her husband was murdered and her daughter traumatized, finally broke down in tears of relief and gratitude. Thank you, my brave little girl, she whispered to the camera. Daddy would be so proud of you. In the courtroom, Lily sat quietly with Scout beside her foster mother Janet, not fully understanding the legal proceedings, but sensing that something important had happened. When Janet leaned down to tell her that the bad man would never hurt anyone again, Lily's response was simple but profound. Scout helped me be brave, and now other little kids won't be scared. Outside the courthouse, the media frenzy was unprecedented. Legal experts were already calling it the most significant advancement in children's rights in decades. The Scout precedent would change how courts across America handled young trauma victims, opening doors for therapy animals in courtrooms nationwide. But inside that courthouse, as the defendants were led away in shackles to begin life sentences, the real victory belonged to a 3-year-old girl who had found her voice through the love of a golden retriever, ensuring that her father's murder would not go unpunished and that justice would finally be served. 2 years after Lily Chun's historic testimony in Dallas Courtroom 302, the ripple effects of her courage continued to transform lives across America and beyond. The Scouts Law, officially known as the Child Witness Protection and Therapy Animal Access Act, had been signed into federal legislation by the president himself, who cited Lily's case as proof that justice must evolve to serve our most vulnerable citizens, regardless of age or circumstance. On a crisp September morning in 2027, 5-year-old Lily Rodriguez, she had taken her adoptive family's name, sat in the passenger seat of Officer Jake Thompson's patrol car, wearing a junior police badge that Dallas Police Chief Maria Gonzalez had specially created for her. Scout, now 6 years old and officially retired from active duty, occupied his usual position in the back seat, his graying muzzle testament to the profound impact he had made during his distinguished career. "Are you excited about visiting the new kids today?" Jake asked as they pulled into the parking lot of Children's Medical Center, where the nation's most advanced trauma therapy program had been established using donations that poured in after Lily's story captured worldwide attention. Scout's excited too. Lily replied with the confident voice of a child who had learned that speaking truth could change the world. "He wants to help them like he helped me when I was scared and couldn't talk to anyone except him." The transformation in Lily over the past 2 years had been nothing short of miraculous. Under the loving care of Janet and Carlos Rodriguez, who had officially adopted her after May, Chun made the heartbreaking but selfless decision that her own ongoing medical recovery prevented her from providing the stable home Lily needed. The little girl had blossomed into a confident, articulate child whose story had inspired millions. Mei Chun, though she would never fully recover from her traumatic brain injury, had remained a constant presence in Lily's life. She visited every weekend, bringing stories about David and helping Lily understand that her father's work as a cybersecurity expert had been about protecting people, a legacy that Lily was now continuing in her own remarkable way. Inside the medical center's state-of-the-art therapy wing, Dr. Rebecca Williams was preparing for another session with children who had EXPERIENCED trauma similar to Lily's. The program, funded by a $50 million federal grant and private donations from around the world, now employed 12 therapy dogs and had helped over 800 children find their voices again. "Dr. Rebecca," Lily called out as she burst through her therapy room doors with Scout padding contentedly beside her. "We brought cookies for the new kids, and Scout learned a new trick." Dr. Williams, whose groundbreaking work with Lily had earned her a Congressional Medal of Honor for civilian service, smiled as she watched the girl who had changed her profession forever. The American Psychological Association had created an entirely new specialty in animal-assisted child trauma therapy based on the techniques developed during Lily's treatment. "Let's see this new trick, Scout," Dr. Williams said, settling into the circle of small chairs, where 3 new young patients waited nervously for their first session. Scout, despite his retirement status, still possessed the intuitive understanding of traumatized children that had made him legendary. He approached each child slowly, allowing them to set the pace of interaction, demonstrating the same patience that had first earned Lily's trust in that hospital room 2 years earlier. "Watch this," Lily announced to the other children with the authority of someone who had become Scout's unofficial ambassador. "Scout, can you help Tommy feel brave?" The golden retriever moved to 7-year-old Tommy Martinez, a boy who hadn't spoken since witnessing a school shooting in San Antonio. Scout gently placed his head on Tommy's lap and began the slow, patient process of building trust that had revolutionized trauma therapy across the country. The success of the Dallas program had led to the establishment of similar facilities in all 50 states. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit now included therapy dogs as standard protocol when interviewing child witnesses, and the Supreme Court had unanimously upheld the constitutional validity of animal-assisted testimony in the landmark Case of Chun v. Texas. Outside the therapy room, Jake Thompson was meeting with the latest group of police officers and therapy dogs graduating from the National Certification Program. The Dallas Police Department had become the training center for what was now known as the Scout Protocol, teaching law enforcement agencies worldwide how to integrate therapy animals into victim services. Officer Thompson called Detective James Park from the Seattle Police Department. My partner Luna and I graduate next week. Any advice for working with kids as young as Lily was? Patience, Jake replied, watching through the observation window as Scout worked his gentle magic. With Tommy, let the dog and the child set the pace. Your job isn't to force healing, it's to provide a safe space where healing can happen naturally. The legal precedents set by Lily's case had extended far beyond American borders. The International Criminal Court had adopted therapy animal protocols for child witnesses in war crimes trials, and countries from Canada to Australia had modified their legal systems to accommodate similar testimony methods. But perhaps the most meaningful measure of success came from the children themselves. The therapy center's walls were covered with drawings, letters, and photographs from young survivors who had found their voices through connections with therapy animals. A letter from 8-year-old Maria Santos in Phoenix read, "Dear Lily and Scout, thank you for showing me that dogs can help kids be brave. My therapy dog Rex helped me tell the judge about the bad man who hurt my family, and now he can't hurt other kids. You started something really important." As the afternoon session concluded, Lily sat in the center of the therapy room with Scout beside her, surrounded by children who had begun their own healing journeys. Tommy Martinez had whispered his first words in months to Scout, while 6-year-old Sarah Kim from Portland had drawn a picture of herself with her new therapy dog companion. "Scout," Lily said thoughtfully, stroking the aging dog's fur. "Remember when I was too scared to talk to anyone except you? Now look at all the kids we're helping." Scout's tail wagged gently, his eyes reflecting the wisdom of a dog who had spent his career understanding that healing happens one connection at a time, one moment of trust at a time, one brave child at a time. That evening, as news programs across the nation reported on the second anniversary of the Scout precedent, Lily Rodriguez sat at her adoptive family's dinner table, helping her little brother Carlos Jr. with his homework. The 3-year-old, who had once been too traumatized to speak, had become a confident 5-year-old who used her voice to help others find theirs. Lily, her adoptive mother Janet asked, "Mrs. Patterson from school called. She wants to know if you and Scout would like to speak to the kindergarten class about being brave." Lily considered this seriously, then nodded with the determination that had made her famous. "We should tell them that being scared is okay, but staying scared forever isn't. And that sometimes the best helpers have 4 legs and wet noses." As Scout dozed peacefully by the fireplace, his service dog vest hanging on a hook nearby like a badge of honor, the golden retriever who had helped transform American jurisprudence dreamed whatever dreams come to heroes who have spent their lives healing broken hearts and giving voice to the voiceless. In courtrooms across America, therapy dogs were helping other traumatized children find the courage to speak their truth. In hospitals and schools, animal-assisted therapy programs were expanding daily. And in the hearts of survivors everywhere, the legacy of a 3-year-old girl and her extraordinary canine companion continued to prove that sometimes the smallest voices can create the biggest changes in the world. The case of Lily Chun and Scout had ended with justice served, but their story would continue inspiring hope and healing for generations to come.